To thank her for saving his daughter, the millionaire appointed the cleaner as the hotel manager. However, when he returned to the hotel weeks later, he was taken aback by the changes. Amanda adjusted the cleaning cart, her hands running over the worn yet sturdy handles, as she surveyed the lavish lobby of the Carter Regency Hotel in downtown Chicago. The place was alive with activity. Guests checking out, luggage rolling across the gleaming marble floors, and the steady hum of phones at the front desk blending into the background. She had been working since the crack of dawn, making sure the hotel's extravagant spaces met the high expectations of its guests. The opulence of the Carter Regency felt worlds away from Amanda's simpler life. She often found herself admiring the dazzling chandeliers and towering floral displays, but quickly reminded herself not to linger too long. This was a hotel of luxury, and she was part of the unseen team that kept it spotless. Her usual routine was broken by the squeak of her cart's wheels as she maneuvered it toward the entrance. Wiping the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, Amanda straightened her uniform and prepared to tackle the brass railings near the elevators. These tasks, though far from glamorous, were hers to handle, and she took pride in doing them well. She often thought about what her grandmother used to say: "Dignity isn't about the job you do, but how you do it." Lost in reflection, Amanda almost missed the shrill, panicked cry that pierced the usual calm of the lobby. It was a desperate, high-pitched sound that immediately sent a jolt of anxiety through her. Dropping her rag, Amanda turned toward the noise. A crowd was gathering near the elevators, and she could feel her pulse quicken. "It's my daughter." A woman's frantic voice rang out. "She's trapped." Without hesitation, Amanda pushed past the onlookers, her heart pounding. When she reached the elevator, she understood the situation. The doors were slightly ajar, revealing an elevator stuck between floors. Inside, a young girl clung to the railing, her face streaked with tears as she screamed for her mother. For a moment Amanda froze, her mind racing. The murmuring crowd only added to the tension, each person speculating on what had gone wrong. But Amanda snapped into action. "Everyone, please step back," she commanded, her voice firm and steady. She turned to the woman, who was sobbing uncontrollably. "Do you have the elevator manual?" The woman fumbled through her purse, pulling out a small booklet with trembling hands. Amanda snatched it from her, flipping through the pages, her eyes scanning for the emergency release instructions. The crowd stood motionless, but Amanda was laser-focused. The girl's cries rang in her ears, urging her to hurry. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Amanda called out, kneeling beside the elevator doors. "Madison," the girl stammered, her grip tightening on the railing. "Madison, I'm Amanda," she said, her voice calm and soothing. "I'm going to get you out of there, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Madison nodded, her sobs subsiding slightly. Amanda quickly located the emergency release lever at the bottom of the elevator shaft and motioned for a nearby security guard. "I need your help. We're going to open this slowly. Be careful," she warned. Together, they worked to pry the doors open wider. The tension in the air was thick, but Amanda continued to reassure Madison. "You're doing great, Madison. Just a little longer." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doors opened wide enough for Amanda to reach inside. She stretched out her hand toward the girl. "Take my hand. You're safe now." Madison hesitated, her tiny fingers trembling, but Amanda's calm, unwavering gaze gave her the strength to act. With one swift motion, Amanda pulled the girl to safety, just as the crowd erupted into applause. Madison immediately threw herself into her mother's arms, and the woman sobbed in relief. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved her life." Before Amanda could respond, a deep voice interrupted her. "What's going on here?" Amanda turned to see a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit making his way through the crowd. His sharp features held a mix of concern and authority. He scanned the scene, his gaze landing on Madison. "Madison, are you okay?" The man's voice softened. "Daddy?" Madison cried, running toward him. He knelt down, pulling her into his arms. His face softened as he held her close. "You scared me," he murmured, before looking up at Amanda. His piercing blue eyes met hers. "You're the one who saved her." Amanda nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "I just did what anyone would do." "Not everyone," he replied, standing to his full height. "You acted when no one else did." He extended his hand. James Carter. Amanda hesitated for a moment before shaking it. Amanda Reyes, she said, her voice steady but still a bit shaken. James studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering as though he was memorizing her face. I owe you more than I can put into words. If there's anything I can do, he began. But before Amanda could respond, the hotel manager appeared, fawning over James. Mr. Carter, I deeply apologize for this incident. We'll make sure the elevator is thoroughly inspected. James waved him off, his attention still fixed on Amanda. This young woman deserves recognition. She didn't just save my daughter. She showed remarkable courage. Amanda flushed under the praise. Thank you, sir. I'm just glad Madison is safe. As the crowd dispersed, Amanda returned to her cleaning cart, her hands trembling slightly. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving her with a strange mix of pride and disbelief. Later that evening, as she clocked out, her supervisor stopped her. Amanda, Mr. Carter has requested to meet with you tomorrow morning. He has something important to discuss. Amanda's heart skipped a beat as she walked home, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. I'm just relieved Madison's all right, Amanda said, her voice steady. James leaned in, his elbows resting on the edge of the desk. What exactly do you do here at the hotel? I'm part of the cleaning team, Amanda replied, her tone composed but humble. And how long have you been with us? James asked. 3 years, she said, feeling a little self-conscious as she shifted in her seat. It's been a good job while I've been pursuing my degree in the evenings. James raised an eyebrow in interest. What's your degree in? Business administration, she responded, her voice growing softer. I've always wanted to run my own business someday. Maybe something small like a cafe or a community center, just something meaningful. James gave a thoughtful nod, as if mentally noting the details. Amanda, after what happened yesterday, I can tell you're capable of so much more than cleaning. You demonstrated initiative, stayed calm, and took action when everyone else hesitated. Those kinds of qualities aren't easy to find. Amanda blinked, a little lost for words, unsure of what he was getting at. I've decided to promote you, James said, leaning back in his chair with a firm but kind expression. Effective immediately. You're now the assistant manager of the hotel. The words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, everything seemed to blur. Assistant manager? She repeated, her voice almost a whisper, disbelief written across her face. Yes, James confirmed, his tone resolute. You'll report directly to the general manager. You'll handle the day-to-day operations, liaise with department heads, and make sure our guests receive the highest level of service. Amanda stared at him, struggling to process. But sir, I'm not qualified for this. I've never managed anything before. James smiled almost kindly. None of us start out qualified, Amanda. We learn as we go. I believe you'll rise to the occasion. I'll personally ensure you get all the training and support you need. She hesitated, on the verge of protesting, but then stopped. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, something she never thought could happen, and turning it down seemed impossible. Thank you, she said, finally gathering her thoughts. I'll do my best. I'm sure you will, James replied, standing and extending his hand. Amanda shook it, still in a bit of a daze, unsure whether she was dreaming. As she left the office, her head was spinning with a mix of excitement, anxiety, and disbelief. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual, her reflection in the mirrored walls staring back at her, full of emotions she couldn't quite understand. When Amanda stepped back into the lobby, the atmosphere had already shifted. Her co-workers were eyeing her curiously. Some congratulated her warmly, while others simply watched with thinly veiled resentment. Assistant manager, someone muttered under their breath. Amanda's gaze landed on Melissa, the current manager, who was standing nearby with her arms crossed. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and sharply tailored suit screamed authority, but the look in her eyes showed nothing but disdain. Congratulations, Melissa said, though her tone was dripping with insincerity. Let's see how you handle the responsibility. Thanks, Amanda responded, keeping her voice calm and controlled, refusing to take the bait as Melissa turned and walked away. But even as she did, Amanda felt a wave of doubt settle over her. Could she really handle this new role? Or had she just stepped into an arena where she didn't belong? That evening, as Amanda made her way home under the glow of the city lights, a feeling of resolve began to take shape. She wasn't going to let this opportunity slip through her fingers. The next morning, Amanda stood in front of the mirror in her small, modest apartment, smoothing the wrinkles from her freshly pressed blouse. Her cleaning uniform had been replaced with a professional outfit she'd borrowed from Mrs. Lopez, her neighbor from down the hall. She fiddled nervously with the collar, trying to keep the feelings of doubt at bay, but the nagging voice of imposter syndrome was hard to ignore. She glanced at the photo of her grandmother on the wall, the one she always looked to for encouragement. "I hope I don't mess this up," Amanda muttered to herself, grabbing her bag and heading out the door toward the Carter Regency Hotel. Amanda arrived 15 minutes early, eager to start on the right foot. The usual morning buzz filled the lobby, but today there was an electric energy in the air. Every glance seemed to follow her as she made her way past the front desk. "Amanda," called out Brian, a friendly voice from her past. He was one of the cleaning staff and jogged over with a warm smile. "Congrats on the promotion. You deserve it." "Thanks, Brian," Amanda said, her nerves easing a little at his kindness. "I'm still wrapping my head around it." "Don't let anyone get to you," Brian said with a wink. "You've got this. Just keep your head up." Feeling slightly reassured, Amanda made her way to the manager's office, where Melissa was waiting with a clipboard. Her smile was sharp, like a blade hidden beneath the surface. "Morning, Amanda," Melissa said, her voice oozing with false sweetness. "I thought I'd take a few minutes to go over your duties, just so you're prepared for your new role." "Thanks, I appreciate it," Amanda said, forcing a polite smile, though inside she could feel her guard going up. Melissa began walking Amanda through the assistant manager's responsibilities, highlighting each point with a tone that carried an edge of condescension. "If you find yourself overwhelmed, just let me know," she added with a pointed look. "It's quite the jump from cleaning floors to managing operations." Amanda fought the urge to snap back, reminding herself to stay composed. "I'll let you know if I need help by the end of the morning." Her first real test came that afternoon during a meeting with the kitchen team. The hotel was preparing for a high-profile VIP dinner, and tensions were running high. The head chef, Marco, a fiery and passionate man, paced the room barking out orders. "We need extra staff on the floor, and the seating arrangement needs to be adjusted," Marco said, waving a printed menu in the air. "And for heaven's sake, someone get housekeeping to stop sending me subpar linens for the table settings." Amanda cleared her throat, drawing attention to herself. "I'll make sure the linens are swapped out immediately, Chef Marco. As for the extra staff, I'll coordinate with the front desk to have a few people reassigned." Marco shot her a skeptical look as though sizing her up, clearly not convinced. "Fine," Marco finally said after a long pause. "But don't mess this up. If this dinner goes south, it's my head on the chopping block." "Understood," Amanda replied, keeping her voice calm and composed. By the time the dinner started, Amanda had already tackled a series of last-minute seating changes and diffused the frustration of a guest whose reservation had been lost. As she stood in the corner of the ballroom, she watched everything unfold smoothly, a quiet sense of pride bubbling up inside her. "Not bad for your first big day," a voice said beside her. Amanda turned in surprise to see James Carter, holding a glass of sparkling water. "Mr. Carter, I didn't see you there," she stammered. "James," he corrected with a warm smile. "You're doing a great job, Amanda. The staff seems to respect you already." Amanda glanced around the room, still a little overwhelmed. "I've got a lot to learn," she admitted. "But thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Before James could respond, Melissa approached with her usual polished demeanor. "Everything seems to be going smoothly, doesn't it?" she asked, her eyes briefly flicking to Amanda. "Looks like the team is doing their part." "Yes, they are," James replied firmly, thanks to Amanda's coordination. Melissa's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "Of course. I'll leave you two to it." As Melissa walked away, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't as amicable as they seemed. It was clear Melissa wasn't going to make her transition easy, but Amanda refused to let any doubts show. She was determined to succeed. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Amanda threw herself into her new role, learning on the fly and slowly gaining the respect of most of the staff. Some people were supportive while others, like Melissa, remained skeptical or even outright dismissive. Each challenge she faced was a reminder of how far she'd come and how much more there was to learn. One evening, just as she was about to leave for the day, Amanda noticed a handwritten note tucked under her desk blotter. She unfolded it, frowning as she read the cryptic message, "Watch your back." Her heart skipped a beat, but she took a deep breath, crumpling the note into her hand. Whoever had written it wasn't going to stop her. She was determined to prove she belonged in this role, no matter what obstacles might arise. The next morning, Amanda arrived early at the Carter Regency, resolved to face whatever challenges the day would bring. The strange note from the night before was still on her mind, but she refused to let it shake her confidence. Her day began just as usual, reviewing schedules, coordinating with department heads, and preparing for a major charity gala that evening, where some of Chicago's most prominent figures would be in attendance. Although the event was technically Melissa's project, Amanda, as assistant manager, had been tasked with overseeing the final preparations. The tension between them was palpable, especially when Melissa handed Amanda a clipboard loaded with last-minute tasks. "These are crucial details," Melissa said with a tight smile. "I trust you can handle them. Don't screw this up. The Carter family will be watching tonight." Amanda took the clipboard without saying a word, biting back a sharp retort. Melissa's condescending tone only pushed her to work harder. Action, Amanda reminded herself, spoke louder than words. She threw herself into the tasks at hand, coordinating deliveries, double-checking seating arrangements, and managing every little detail to make sure the gala would go off without a hitch. By early afternoon, the ballroom was a whirlwind of activity. Staff rushed around, setting up tables draped in luxurious cloths, with crystal glassware and elaborate floral arrangements. The soft sounds of a string quartet warming up added to the elegant chaos. Amanda oversaw everything with a sharp eye, stepping in to resolve any small issues before they could escalate. But as the event drew closer, something felt off. The kitchen was unusually quiet, so Amanda went to investigate. Inside, Chef Marco was pacing, visibly frustrated. "What's going on?" Amanda asked, stepping into the kitchen. "We're missing key ingredients for tonight's main course," Marco snapped. "The order was supposed to arrive this morning, but it's nowhere to be found." Amanda's frown deepened. She had personally confirmed the delivery the day before. "Let me check with the supplier," she said, pulling out her phone. After a series of frantic phone calls, Amanda discovered that the order had been mysteriously canceled. Her stomach sank. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately tampered with the preparations, and she had a strong suspicion about who was behind it. But there was no time to dwell on it. "Okay," Amanda said, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "We'll improvise." "Marco, what can we make with what we have?" Marco hesitated, clearly irritated. "We could do a variation of the dish, but it won't be what was planned." "Then let's make it work," Amanda said firmly. "I'll take care of the guests if anyone complains." Marco studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fine, but this is on you." Amanda dove headfirst into the chaos, organizing the kitchen staff and ensuring the replacement dish was prepared flawlessly. By the time the event began, the kitchen was back on track, and Amanda was out on the ballroom floor, managing staff and greeting guests as they arrived. The gala was in full swing when Melissa approached Amanda, champagne glass in hand. Her smile was as sharp as ever. "I heard there were some issues in the kitchen," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Everything okay?" Amanda met her gaze, unwavering. "Yes, everything's under control." "Good," Melissa replied, her expression clearly disappointed. She leaned in closer, her voice taking on a more insidious tone. "I told you this job was a lot of pressure. Be careful, Amanda. One mistake could cost you." Amanda clenched her jaw, but didn't respond. Instead, she turned her attention back to the event, making sure the guests were enjoying themselves. She kept a close watch on both the kitchen and the dining floor, ready to handle any issues that might arise. When the main course was served, Amanda held her breath. The improvised dish was a gamble, but as the plates were set in front of the guests, the reactions were overwhelmingly positive. Several diners even praised the staff for their creativity with the menu. James Carter, who had been observing from the sidelines, approached Amanda toward the end of the night. "I heard about the situation in the kitchen," he said, his tone serious. "You handled it well." "Thank you," Amanda replied, a mix of relief and pride washing over her. It wasn't perfect, but we managed. James nodded, his expression softening. It's not just about handling the ideal situations. It's how you deal with the unexpected that truly demonstrates leadership. Keep it up. Amanda smiled, his words strengthening her resolve. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, she took a moment to breathe, looking around the room with a sense of accomplishment. The gala had been a success despite the challenges, and she had proven she could handle pressure. But her brief moment of triumph was short-lived. When she returned to the office to collect her things, she found another note waiting for her on her desk. This one was typed. The words on the note were cold and personal. "This isn't over." Amanda stared at it, her chest tightening. The weight of the message sank in, and though she didn't know who was behind the sabotage or the threats, one thing was crystal clear. Someone was determined to see her fail. Clutching the note tightly in her hand, she made a silent vow to herself. "I won't let them win." The next morning, Amanda woke up with a lingering unease. The anonymous notes and the sabotage at the gala had only fueled her determination, but now she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. For years, she had kept a low profile, quietly doing her job without drawing attention to herself. Now, however, she was in a visible position, and it was clear that there were people who didn't want her there. The early shift at the Carter Regency was as busy as ever. Amanda moved through the hotel, greeting staff with a polite nod, her mind focused on the day ahead. The challenges of the previous night were behind her, but she knew the pressure would only keep mounting. "Good morning, Amanda." She turned to see Madison, James Carter's daughter, skipping toward her in the lobby. The young girl's golden curls bounced with each step, and her beaming smile was infectious. "What are you doing here so early?" Amanda asked, bending slightly to meet her gaze. "Daddy's in a meeting," Madison said, her voice bright with excitement. "He said I could come say hi." She handed Amanda a small drawing, her face lit up with pride. "This is for you." Amanda took the piece of paper, smiling as she looked at it. It was a colorful drawing of two people standing next to an elevator. "Is this us?" Amanda asked, her heart swelling with warmth. Madison nodded enthusiastically. "You're my hero." Amanda's chest tightened at the sweetness of her words. "Thank you, Madison. I'll treasure this forever." From across the lobby, James appeared, his tall, commanding figure cutting through the morning hustle. He approached with a warm smile, nodding at Amanda as he reached his daughter. "Madison, why don't you go sit with Miss Veronica at the front desk while I talk to Amanda?" Once Madison was out of earshot, James turned to Amanda, his tone more serious. "I wanted to thank you again for all your work last night. The gala was a success, and that's in no small part because of your quick thinking." "Thank you," Amanda replied, her mind briefly drifting back to the stress of the evening. "It wasn't easy, but I'm glad it worked out." James studied her for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. "You're doing well, Amanda. Better than I think even you realize." He paused before continuing, his voice softening. "But I want to make sure you're not feeling overwhelmed." Amanda hesitated, her brow furrowing. "I won't lie," she admitted. "It's been a big adjustment, and there have been challenges." "Challenges?" James raised an eyebrow. Amanda glanced around the lobby, making sure no one was nearby. "The notes. The sabotage. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "But it's clear someone doesn't want me here. There have been a few incidents. Nothing I can't handle, but I can tell not everyone is happy about my promotion." James's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. "If anyone is making your life difficult, I want to know. This hotel thrives on respect and teamwork, and I won't tolerate anything less." Amanda felt her confidence rise in the wake of his words. "I appreciate that, James," she said, her voice steady. "I'll let you know if it escalates." Before either of them could say more, Melissa appeared, flashing her signature polished smile. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." "Amanda," she added, her tone dripping with insincerity. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," James replied, his expression cooling. "We were just discussing how well the gala went last night." "Yes," Melissa said, her gaze narrowing slightly as she looked at Amanda. "Amanda handled everything admirably, though I imagine it was a bit overwhelming for her first major event." Amanda forced a neutral smile. "It was a team effort." James glanced between the two women, his instincts picking up on the tension in the air. "Melissa, make sure Amanda has everything she needs for the upcoming weekend conference. I want it to run just as smoothly as last night's event." "Of course," Melissa replied, though her voice betrayed her irritation. "I'll make sure she's fully prepared." As Melissa walked away, Amanda exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the subtle power struggle between them. Later that afternoon, Amanda was in the break room sipping her coffee when Madison appeared again, this time with Ryan Carter, James's younger brother, in tow. "Uncle Ryan wanted to meet you," Madison announced brightly. Amanda looked up, startled to see Ryan standing in front of her. Ryan was tall, with a rugged charm that contrasted sharply with James's more polished demeanor. His easy smile was disarming as he extended a hand to her. "So you're the famous Amanda," Ryan said with a playful tone. "Madison hasn't stopped talking about you since the elevator incident." "Famous might be a stretch," Amanda replied, shaking his hand with a smile. Ryan laughed, the sound light and warm. "Don't be modest. Saving my niece is a big deal. I wanted to thank you personally." "Just doing what anyone would have done," Amanda said, though she appreciated his sincerity. Ryan leaned against the counter, his expression softening. "I know my brother. If he trusts you, that says a lot. You've clearly earned your place here." Amanda was taken aback by his words. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little softer. "That means a lot." As Ryan and Madison left, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ryan's sudden appearance than met the eye. She had heard whispers around the hotel about his mysterious past and his abrupt disappearance, but she didn't have the time to dwell on it. For now, her focus was on navigating her new role and the growing complexities at the Carter Regency. The following week, Amanda found herself balancing the demands of her new responsibilities while trying to manage the undercurrents of office politics. Despite the mounting pressures, she found some solace in her growing bond with Madison, whose frequent visits to the hotel seemed to brighten her days. Still, something about Ryan lingered in the back of her mind. His easygoing charm was a stark contrast to James's more serious, authoritative demeanor. Though Amanda didn't pry, she couldn't help noticing the way some staff members exchanged glances whenever Ryan walked by. There was clearly more to his story than he let on. That Friday evening, the hotel was buzzing with activity in preparation for a high-profile wedding in the grand ballroom. The bride, Melissa, had spared no expense, and the ceremony promised to be the event of the season. As part of her duties, Amanda was overseeing the final details of the setup. She moved through the ballroom, ensuring that every last element was perfectly in place. Despite Melissa's earlier reassurances that everything was under control, Amanda had learned by now to double-check. The stakes were too high to leave anything to chance. As the guests began to filter in, Amanda positioned herself discreetly near the back of the room, ready to step in should any last-minute issues arise. She watched as Melissa made her grand entrance, draped in a sparkling designer gown that shimmered under the lights. But there was something missing: the groom. His absence quickly became the subject of hushed conversations. "Where's the groom?" one guest whispered. "Is he late?" another speculated. Amanda's stomach tightened in unease. She turned to the event coordinator. "Have you seen the groom?" The coordinator shook her head. "Not since this morning." He was supposed to be in the suite with his groomsmen. Determined not to let things spiral, Amanda excused herself and slipped out of the ballroom. She headed toward the private suites, her mind racing. As she turned a corner, she nearly ran into Ryan. He looked more serious than she had ever seen him before. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" Amanda asked, startled by his sudden appearance. "He's not here," Ryan muttered, his jaw clenched. Before Amanda could ask for more details, he strode past her, heading toward the ballroom. Curious and concerned, Amanda followed at a distance. When Ryan entered the ballroom, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to him as he made a beeline for Melissa, who was standing at the altar with a strained smile on her face. "What are you doing here?" Melissa hissed, her voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. "I could ask you the same thing," Ryan shot back, his voice booming across the room. "You didn't think I'd show up, did you?" The room froze. Amanda's pulse quickened as the tension in the air became almost unbearable. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan began, his voice loud and clear, "I apologize for the interruption, but I think it's time for some honesty." Melissa's face drained of color, her composure slipping. Ryan, don't what? Ryan snapped. Tell the truth? The crowd leaned in, intrigued. James, who had been sitting near the front with Madison, stood up, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. Ryan, James called, his voice low and commanding. What's going on? Ryan turned to face his brother, his gaze unwavering. She's the reason I disappeared. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Amanda's heart raced as she tried to process Ryan's words. What are you talking about? James demanded. Ryan took a deep breath, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. Years ago, Melissa and I were involved. She convinced me to take out loans I couldn't repay. When everything came crashing down, she disappeared, leaving me to deal with the fallout. I had no choice but to leave Chicago to escape the mess she created. Melissa's face twisted with fury. You're lying. Am I? Ryan retorted, pulling a folder from his jacket and holding it up for everyone to see. Because I have the receipts. Bank statements, emails, everything. James stepped forward, his jaw tight. Melissa, is this true? Melissa faltered, her confident facade crumbling under the weight of the accusations. I was trying to help him. He was irresponsible with his money. Ryan laughed bitterly. Help me? You drained my accounts and left me to fend for myself. The room erupted into shocked murmurs. Melissa's carefully crafted image was crumbling in front of everyone's eyes. Amanda's mind raced as she took in the scene. She noticed the extravagant wedding arrangements, the vendors Melissa had insisted on, the discrepancies in the hotel's budget reports. It all made sense now. Unable to stay silent any longer, Amanda stepped forward. Mr. Carter, she said, addressing James directly, I need to speak with you privately. It's about Melissa and the hotel's finances. James turned to her, his expression grim. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Amanda hesitated for a moment but then nodded. I've been reviewing the hotel's budgets as part of my new role. There are inconsistencies. Large sums of money missing from our accounts. I believe Melissa has been using company funds to pay for this wedding. The room buzzed with whispers and Melissa's face turned an alarming shade of red. That's ridiculous. She snapped. She's lying. I have the reports to prove it, Amanda said calmly. James's gaze hardened as he turned to Melissa. Is this true? Melissa's defiance crumbled as the weight of the accusations pressed down on her. The room fell into a heavy silence, save for the soft rustling of the crowd. James turned to Amanda, his expression a mixture of disappointment and resolve. Amanda, gather all the evidence. I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Yes, sir, Amanda replied, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. As Melissa stormed out of the room, the crowd began to disperse, whispers of scandal trailing behind her. Ryan stood silently, his expression unreadable. James approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. We'll talk later, he said quietly. Ryan nodded, and James turned to Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. You handled this well. Amanda exhaled, feeling the weight of the evening settle into her shoulders. She had stepped into a storm she hadn't seen coming, but she wasn't backing down. The next morning, Amanda sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and notes. The early sunlight filtered through the window, but she barely noticed. After the chaos of the previous night, she had gone straight home and stayed up late reviewing the hotel's financial reports. Each discrepancy she found weighed heavily on her chest. Melissa's misuse of funds was more extensive than Amanda had initially realized. Amanda sipped her coffee, trying to shake the fatigue that clung to her. The thought of presenting her findings to James was daunting, but she knew it had to be done. By the time she arrived at the Carter Regency, the tension in the air was palpable. Whispers followed her as she walked through the lobby, the rumors about the disastrous wedding and Melissa's sudden exit buzzing around her. Good morning, Amanda. Brian, one of the housekeepers, greeted her with a friendly smile. Big day, huh? You have no idea, Amanda replied with a faint smile. She made her way straight to James's office, folder in hand. His assistant ushered her in, and Amanda found James already seated at his desk, his expression serious. Ryan was there too, sitting across from him, leaning back with a relaxed air that contrasted sharply with James's stern demeanor. Amanda, James said, gesturing for her to sit. Let's hear it. Amanda placed the folder on his desk, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. I've reviewed the financial records thoroughly. Melissa diverted significant amounts of hotel funds to pay for her wedding and personal expenses. These are the reports, along with invoices and receipts that match the discrepancies. James flipped through the folder, his frown deepening with each page. Ryan leaned forward, glancing over the documents James had been reviewing. This isn't good, he said, his voice breaking the tense silence. She's been draining the hotel's resources. James closed the folder slowly, his expression hardening as he turned toward Amanda. How long has this been going on? Amanda's tone was calm, but there was a hint of frustration behind her words. From what I've gathered, at least 6 months, she replied. But some of the transactions go even further back. It's likely she's been skimming funds for years. James let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair as he absorbed the news. I can't believe this. She was someone I trusted completely. Ryan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, offering a knowing look. Melissa is good at what she does, James. You're not the first to fall for her act, and you won't be the last. James nodded grimly, then turned back to Amanda. You've done the right thing bringing this to light. I'll take it from here. The legal team will handle the rest. Amanda hesitated for a moment, a flicker of guilt passing through her. I'm sorry this happened on your watch, Mr. Carter. I know how much this hotel means to you. James gave her a faint but reassuring smile. It's not your fault, Amanda. In fact, if it weren't for you, we'd still be in the dark. You've done more than enough. As Amanda stepped out of the office, a weight lifted from her shoulders, but an uneasy feeling lingered. Melissa's deceit had been exposed, but the damage was already done. It wouldn't be easy to erase the consequences of her actions. Later that day, as Amanda oversaw the lobby, she spotted Melissa standing near the elevator, dressed casually and carrying a large bag. Her head was held high, ignoring the whispers of staff members passing by. Amanda approached cautiously. Melissa, she said, her tone neutral but firm. Melissa turned, her face unreadable. Just here to collect my things, she said flatly. Amanda nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. I'm sorry things ended like this. Melissa scoffed, her laugh bitter. Are you? You got exactly what you wanted, didn't you? A promotion, and now you can hold the moral high ground. That's not what this was about, Amanda replied, her voice steady. The hotel needed someone trustworthy. You were taking from this place, Melissa. You know that. Melissa's eyes burned with anger. You think you're better than me, don't you? You're just a janitor who got lucky. That's all. Amanda's jaw tightened, but she refused to rise to her taunts. Good luck, Melissa. I hope you find a new start. Melissa glared at her for a long moment before turning and stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, Amanda exhaled, the encounter leaving her with a mix of relief and unease. That evening, Amanda sat in the break room, sipping tea and trying to unwind after the whirlwind of the day. To her surprise, Ryan walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Long day? He asked, setting one cup down in front of her. You could say that, Amanda replied with a small smile, grateful for the gesture. Ryan sat down across from her, a more serious look on his face now. I wanted to thank you, Amanda. Exposing Melissa? That took guts. Not a lot of people would have done it. Amanda shrugged, her expression thoughtful. It wasn't just about courage. It was the right thing to do. Ryan studied her, a glint of admiration in his eyes. You remind me of James, you know? That same stubborn sense of doing what's right, no matter the cost. Amanda smiled faintly. That's a compliment, right? Ryan chuckled. Absolutely. They both fell into a comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the past few days settling between them. Amanda found herself relaxing more than she expected, her guard lowering ever so slightly. So what happens now? She asked. With everything? With the hotel? Ryan leaned back in his chair, his thoughts clearly turning inward. James will handle the fallout. He's good at keeping things in line, even when everything's falling apart around him. And you? Amanda asked, her curiosity piqued. Ryan paused, his usual easygoing attitude giving way to something more serious. I came back because I wanted to make things right. With James, with myself. Melissa was a part of that. But now, I'm not so sure. I think I need to figure out what's next for me. Amanda nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Whatever you decide, I hope it brings you peace. Ryan gave her a small smile. Same to you, Amanda. As he left the room, Amanda couldn't shake the thought that their lives might be more intertwined than she realized. In the days following Melissa's departure, the atmosphere in the hotel grew strangely quiet. The staff seemed more cautious, their whispers soft and laden with uncertainty. It wasn't just the fallout from Melissa's betrayal. It was the collective worry about what would happen next. The scandal had shaken the foundation of the Carter Regency, and everyone was bracing for more changes. Amanda, however, refused to let the tension distract her. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove that James had made the right choice in trusting her. Her role as assistant manager had become even more demanding, but the challenges only fueled her drive to succeed. One morning, Amanda arrived early to prepare for a meeting with James and the department heads. She had spent the night reviewing proposals for a new customer loyalty program, hoping her ideas would help restore the hotel's reputation in the wake of the scandal. The meeting was to be held in one of the smaller conference rooms, its sleek design reflecting the hotel's modern, upscale aesthetic. James sat at the head of the table, his usual composed demeanor now tinged with a hint of exhaustion. Ryan was there too, leaning back in his chair with his trademark confidence, though his eyes remained sharp, taking in every detail. Let's get started, James said, his voice cutting through the room. He gestured to Amanda. Amanda, you're up. Amanda took a deep breath, standing and handing out copies of her proposal to the team. I've been reviewing our current customer engagement strategies and comparing them with industry trends, she began. What I've found is that we lack strong incentives for repeat guests. My proposal focuses on launching a loyalty program that not only encourages repeat visits, but also attracts new customers. As she spoke, Amanda could feel her confidence building. The room was quiet, the department heads listening intently, and even Ryan seemed impressed, nodding occasionally as she detailed the program's key elements. When she finished, James smiled approvingly. Excellent work, Amanda. This is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need. I agree, Ryan added. I like the idea of focusing on personalized rewards. It makes guests feel truly valued. Amanda felt a surge of pride at their praise, but the moment was cut short by one of the senior managers, Mr. Whitaker, who cleared his throat. This is a solid proposal, he said, but implementing it will require significant budget changes. Given the financial setbacks we've had, is now the right time to allocate new expenses? Amanda met his gaze, steady and calm. I understand your concern, Mr. Whitaker, but the long-term benefits of this program far outweigh the initial investment. Guests who feel valued are more likely to return and recommend our hotel to others. It's an investment in our future. Amanda's words hung in the air, and she could tell Mr. Whitaker was still unsure. His brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't challenge her further. She stood firm, holding her ground as she finished her point. James cleared his throat and spoke decisively. Let's move forward with it. He turned toward Amanda. Work with finance to finalize the details. Amanda nodded, her heart racing with both relief and pride. Will do. Later that afternoon, Amanda was reviewing schedules in her office when Ryan appeared in the doorway, wearing his usual grin. Got a minute? He asked. Sure, Amanda replied, gesturing to the chair. Ryan plopped down opposite her, his casual posture at odds with the intensity in his gaze. You were great in the meeting this morning, he said. James might not say it outright, but he's impressed with you. Amanda smiled, though her modesty kept her from fully accepting the praise. Thanks. I just want to do what's best for the hotel. Ryan's tone shifted, becoming more serious. That's exactly why he trusts you, he said. Then he added, his voice lowering, but not everyone in that room was on your side. Amanda raised an eyebrow. You mean Whitaker? Ryan nodded. He's old school, doesn't like change. And he doesn't like it when someone outside the system challenges the status quo. Watch your back with him. He's not Melissa, but he'll put up roadblocks if it serves his interests. Amanda took in his words, grateful for the heads up. Thanks for the warning. I'll keep an eye on him. Ryan stood, his grin returning. Good, because I'm betting on you, Amanda. As he left, Amanda felt a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Ryan's support felt genuine, But she also wondered what his own future at the hotel might look like. His role still seemed unclear, and she couldn't help but wonder where his loyalties truly lay. That evening, Amanda decided to check in on the housekeeping staff. It had been a while since she'd visited the department where she'd started her journey at the Carter Regency. Stepping into the busy laundry room, she was greeted by familiar faces. "Amanda," Brian called out, his grin wide. "Look at you, all corporate now." "Not quite," Amanda replied with a laugh. "How's everything going down here?" "Same as always," Brian said, though his tone carried a hint of frustration. "We're a little short-staffed this week, but we're managing." Amanda frowned. "Why didn't anyone tell me? I can arrange for temporary help if you need it." Brian shrugged. "Didn't want to bother you. You've got bigger things to worry about." Amanda's voice became firm. "Brian, if something's wrong, I need to know. You're part of the team, and your work is just as important as anyone else's." Brian smiled, a look of respect in his eyes. "Thanks, Amanda. I'll keep that in mind." As Amanda left the department, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. No matter how high she rose, she knew she couldn't forget where she had started, or the people who had supported her along the way. Later that night, she collapsed onto her couch at home, exhausted but content. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Good job today. Don't let Whitaker get to you." Amanda smiled, her fingers hovering over the screen before replying, "Thanks. I won't." As she set the phone down, a thought crossed her mind. For all the challenges she had faced, she was starting to feel like she truly belonged, and that more than anything gave her hope for the future. The next morning, Amanda walked into the Carter Regency with renewed purpose. The success of the meeting, coupled with the camaraderie she felt with the staff, had boosted her confidence. But there was still unfinished business. Melissa's removal from her position had exposed the cracks in the hotel's foundation, and the damage lingered. The hotel's reputation had been tarnished, and the morale of the staff had taken a hit. Amanda's day began with an unexpected meeting request from James. As she walked toward his office, she found both James and Ryan in a serious conversation. "Good morning, Amanda," James greeted, gesturing for her to sit. "We've received some new information about Melissa." Amanda's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of information?" Ryan leaned forward, his tone steady but urgent. "We've been digging into Melissa's background, specifically her ties to the vendors she hired for the wedding." Amanda's eyes widened. So she wasn't just misusing hotel funds. She was funneling money into her own businesses? "Exactly," James confirmed, his jaw tightening. "Several of the vendors she chose are linked to companies she holds a stake in. It's a clear conflict of interest, and it explains the inflated invoices she submitted. We've already handed over the evidence to the legal team, but I wanted you to know. You'll likely be called to testify about the discrepancies you uncovered." Amanda nodded, her resolve hardening. "Whatever you need, I'll do it." James offered a small, appreciative smile. "This won't be easy, Amanda, but it's necessary. Melissa's betrayal cuts deep, and we need to make sure she's held accountable for what she's done." As Amanda left the office, her mind raced with the implications of what she had just learned. Melissa's actions had been more calculated than she'd originally suspected, and the extent of her deception was staggering. That evening, Amanda returned to her office to organize her notes for the legal team. She was focused, but the sound of a soft knock at the door made her look up. Ryan was leaning casually against the doorframe. "You look busy," he remarked, stepping inside. "Just making sure everything is in order for the legal team," Amanda replied, motioning to the paper spread across her desk. Ryan sat down across from her, his usual grin replaced by a more thoughtful expression. "You know, most people in your position would be overwhelmed by now, but you just keep pushing forward." Amanda chuckled. "Trust me, I have my moments. But this isn't just about me. It's about doing what's right for the hotel, for the staff. They deserve better." Ryan nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "James was right to trust you. You're exactly what this place needed." Amanda felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "Thanks, Ryan. That means a lot." For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of the day momentarily lifting. To Amanda's surprise, Melissa didn't fight back. Instead, she smirked, her gaze sweeping the room as though she were above it all, as though the outcome didn't matter. As the security guards guided her out, Melissa shot Amanda a cold look and mouthed, "This isn't over." A chill crept up Amanda's spine, but she dismissed it. Melissa's chapter at the Carter Regency was finished. No amount of posturing would change that. After the event, Amanda stayed behind to help the staff clean up. She moved through the room, stacking chairs and gathering scattered programs, but a nagging feeling lingered. Melissa's departure hadn't felt like the final act, more like a pause in an ongoing story. Later that evening, Amanda sat at her desk, sorting through papers, when she noticed a folded note placed carefully on top of her stack. The handwriting was elegant, almost deliberate in its sharpness. "You've made an enemy, Amanda. Watch your back." Her heart skipped a beat, and her hands trembled slightly as she read the words. Whoever wrote this was trying to intimidate her. The thought unsettled her, but she refused to let fear dictate her next move. She took a deep breath and tucked the note into her drawer, her mind already racing through ways to protect both the hotel and herself from any threats that might come her way. When she left the office later, the streets outside were bathed in the cold light of the city. The pavement stretched out before her like an endless road. Amanda felt a rush of resolve. Melissa's time was up, but Amanda wasn't going to let some anonymous threat stop her from forging ahead. The next morning, Amanda walked into the Carter Regency with a steely determination. The note from the previous night loomed in her thoughts, but she refused to let it derail her focus. Instead, she poured her energy into ensuring that the hotel continued to run smoothly, no matter the external distractions. Amanda was preparing for an important meeting with investors later in the day. James had invited several key stakeholders to discuss the hotel's future, hoping to rebuild trust after the scandal that had rocked them all. Amanda knew the stakes were high, and her contribution to the meeting would be crucial. She spent the entire morning making sure every detail was in place, from the presentation slides to the refreshments. When the time finally came, Amanda felt a mixture of nerves and confidence as the investors began to arrive. The sleek boardroom was ready, and James opened the meeting with his usual composed presence. Amanda sat at the end of the table, ready to present the hotel's plans for growth and revitalization. Ryan was also there, leaning back in his chair with his usual relaxed posture, though his eyes were sharp and observant. Before diving into the agenda, James addressed the room. "I want to acknowledge the events of the past few weeks," he said in a calm, measured tone. "As you know, we uncovered significant financial discrepancies connected to a former team member. While this setback has been unfortunate, we've already taken swift action to correct the course." Amanda listened carefully as James outlined the steps the hotel was taking to recover. When it was her turn, she stood with a sense of purpose, presenting her proposal for a customer loyalty program designed to improve retention and enhance the hotel's reputation. Her words were met with approving nods, and when investors asked about the costs, Amanda responded confidently, citing her extensive research and the long-term benefits of such a program. "Impressive work, Miss Reyes," one of the investors said, a note of approval in his voice. "Your plan has a lot of potential." Amanda smiled, her chest swelling with pride. "Thank you. I'm confident this program will set the Carter Regency apart as a leader in guest experience." The meeting proceeded smoothly, but just as things were beginning to wind down, a staff member whispered something to James. He looked up, his brow furrowing, and excused himself from the room. Ryan's expression darkened as he followed James out, and Amanda's curiosity piqued. She wrapped up her part of the presentation and quickly followed them into the hallway. In the corridor, she found James and Ryan in an intense conversation with security. "What's happening?" Amanda asked, stepping toward them. "It's Melissa," Ryan said through gritted teeth. "She's downstairs causing a scene." Amanda's stomach twisted. "What does she want now?" James's voice was tight with frustration. "She claims she has information that will expose the truth." Amanda didn't hesitate. "Maybe we should hear her out." Both James and Ryan looked at her in surprise. "She's desperate," Amanda continued. "If we let her say her piece, we can finally put this to bed." James paused for a moment, his expression conflicted, but then he nodded. "Fine. But we do this my way. We'll meet in a small office near the lobby. Security will remain close by." They made their way to the office where Melissa was already seated, looking more disheveled than usual. Her posture was defiant, though Amanda could see the edges of her confidence beginning to crack. Well, James said coldly, what is it you think we need to hear? Melissa leaned back in her chair, smirking. You think you've won, don't you? You've exposed me, ruined my reputation. But you have no idea what the full story is. Amanda watched her carefully, noting the flicker of desperation beneath the bravado. I wasn't the only one misusing funds, Melissa continued, her gaze darting to Ryan. Your brother had his hands in the pie too. Ryan's jaw clenched, but he didn't react. You're lying. Am I? Melissa's voice dripped with malice. Who introduced me to those vendors who signed off on the invoices? You were just as involved, Ryan. Maybe not as much as I was, but enough to get your hands dirty. James's eyes narrowed as he turned to his brother. Is this true? Ryan met James's gaze with a steady, regretful look. I made mistakes, James. I trusted the wrong people. But I didn't steal from the hotel. Melissa laughed bitterly. Believe what you want, but if you dig deep enough, you'll find his fingerprints all over this mess. Amanda stepped forward, her voice unwavering. Even if Ryan made mistakes, the evidence against you is crystal clear, Melissa. You can't just deflect blame onto others to save yourself. Melissa's smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered, her voice growing more venomous. You think you're so righteous, don't you, Amanda? You're just a pawn in James's game. Do you really think you'll last in this world? Amanda met her gaze, unflinching. I think integrity always wins in the end. That's why you're sitting here and I'm not. The room went silent as the weight of Melissa's words hung in the air. Finally, James stood up, his expression resolute. This conversation is over, he said firmly. Melissa, you'll be hearing from our legal team. Ryan, we'll talk later. Melissa was escorted out by security, her defiant attitude finally crumbling as the reality of her situation settled in. Ryan remained behind, his shoulders tense. Ryan began, but James raised a hand. We'll sort this out, James said, his voice low but firm. Right now, let's focus on moving forward. Ryan nodded, his gratitude clear in his eyes. Amanda said nothing, sensing that the brothers needed their space to resolve their issues. As she walked home later that evening, Amanda reflected on everything that had happened. The confrontation with Melissa had been intense, but it also felt like a turning point. The truth had come to light, and now the Carter Regency could start to heal. When she reached her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from James. You handled today with grace and courage. Thank you. Amanda smiled as she read the words, feeling a deep sense of affirmation. It was a reminder that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The following week brought a welcome calm to the Carter Regency. While the scandal had left its mark, the staff was pulling together, focusing on rebuilding the hotel's reputation. Amanda, now fully settled into her role as assistant manager, felt the weight of her responsibility but also the satisfaction of knowing she was making a real difference. On a crisp Saturday morning, Amanda arrived early at the hotel. The executive team had organized a staff appreciation brunch, a gesture James had initiated to boost morale and acknowledge the team's hard work through the turbulent weeks. Amanda had played a key role in organizing the event, making sure every detail reflected the hotel's commitment to excellence. The grand ballroom was filled with staff, and the air buzzed with a sense of camaraderie. Tables were adorned with fresh flowers, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries filled the room. Amanda moved through the crowd, chatting with colleagues, ensuring everyone felt included. Looks like a success, Ryan said, appearing by her side with a cup of coffee in hand. Amanda grinned. Let's hope it stays that way. No surprise disasters today, please. Ryan chuckled. I think we've had our fill of those for a while. As the brunch continued, James stepped onto a small stage at the front of the room. The crowd quieted, and Amanda felt the atmosphere shift, the collective anticipation hanging in the air. His voice, steady and authoritative, carried over the room. I want to thank each and every one of you for your dedication and resilience, James began. The past few weeks have tested us, but together we've come through stronger. This hotel thrives because of its people, and I'm proud to call all of you my team. The room erupted into applause, and James waited for it to subside before continuing. There's one person I'd like to recognize in particular, he said, his gaze scanning the room before landing on Amanda. Someone who has stepped up in ways I never expected, and has become an invaluable part of this hotel's future. Amanda's heart skipped a beat as James's eyes met hers. He gestured for her to join him on stage, and the room filled with applause. Nervous but honored, Amanda made her way to the front. James extended his hand and she shook it, her cheeks flushing under the attention. Amanda Reyes has shown us what integrity, hard work, and courage look like, James said, his voice steady but full of admiration. She's proven that leadership isn't about titles or experience. It's about character. And it's because of her character that I'm proud to announce Amanda's promotion to General Manager of the Carter Regency Hotel. The room fell silent for a beat, then erupted into cheers. Amanda's breath caught in her throat as the word sank in, General Manager. She hadn't seen it coming. James leaned in slightly, his voice just for her. You've earned this, Amanda. Don't doubt it for a second. Amanda nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. She turned to face the crowd, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke. Thank you, everyone. This means more to me than I can put into words. I promise to do everything I can to make this hotel the best it can be for all of us. The applause grew louder, and as Amanda stepped off the stage, she was surrounded by colleagues offering congratulations. Even Ryan, who usually kept his emotions in check, gave her an approving nod. That evening, Amanda found herself alone in her office, reflecting on how far she had come. The small room that once seemed intimidating now felt like home. She thought back to the day she saved Madison, the day everything had changed for her. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was James, his expression softer than usual. Mind if I join you for a minute? He asked. Of course, Amanda said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. James sat down, watching her for a moment before speaking. You've come a long way, Amanda. I knew you had potential, but you've exceeded every expectation. Thank you, Amanda said, her voice humble. But I couldn't have done it without your support. James smiled. It's not just my support. You've earned the respect of everyone here, from the staff to the investors. That's something no one can give you. Something you've built yourself. Amanda nodded, a swell of pride filling her chest. Still surreal. A few months ago, I was just a housekeeper trying to make ends meet. And now you're leading one of the most prestigious hotels in Chicago, James said with a smile. It's a testament to who you are. Don't ever forget that. As James stood to leave, Amanda stopped him. James, thank you for believing in me. It's made all the difference. He paused and smiled warmly. It's not hard to believe in someone who proves themselves every day. Keep doing what you're doing, Amanda. That night, as Amanda walked home, the city lights twinkling around her, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She had faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, but had come out the other side stronger. There were still more obstacles to face and goals to achieve, but for the first time in a long time, Amanda felt confident in her path. She had found her place, not just in the Carter Regency but in her own life. And this was only the beginning.